I don't know about you, but it doesn't seem 12 months since I've last stood in Barnsley on that cold, rainy night. But here we are, another year older. Some familiar faces, so thank you for coming back. Anybody in the audience born after 1976? No, I didn't think so. So I'm going to just take you back to 1976. Reason will become clear. But first of all, just something that might jog your memory. 76 was a long, hot summer. It was like this one a bit, which tends to have gone if you feel it outside today. You might have been shopping for a new Morris Marina. I couldn't remember that. I was obviously there, but I couldn't remember what that one of them were. I knew it were a Morris, but I weren't sure what type of a Morris. But apparently it's a Morris Marina. You could have been going at movies. So you could have been going to see Rocky. Who would have thought that there'd have been another 5 of them after that? But at the start of a franchise, a popular one. You could have been on the lookout for a home computer. In which case you would be right at the edge of the curve and you would have been buying the very first Apple computer. I think they've gone a bit style-wise different now, don't you think? But reason for shoehorning all that in is me. That is me. And that's when I started work. I started work at South Yorkshire Pensions Authority, then called South Yorkshire County Council, and then called superannuation. I went because I went on a work experience scheme, so I was kind of sent. I didn't actually apply for a job, I was sent. And I came home and my mum says, well, have you got a job then? I says, yeah, in superannuation. She says, what that's? I don't know. No idea. And actually, it took me a while to get to know it. Unfortunately, we changed it to pensions. But I think just all that aside, the reason I wanted to do this is if you recall last year, for the ones that attended last year, we started to put some context around the statistics of the fund, so to share with you various statistics about the fund and how it's made up and, your fund and you're the people within it and so on. So, and I did that. So when I was thinking about doing it this year, I thought, well, let's compare it a little bit with how it was when I actually started work. And it shows you how things have changed. And in a way, the scheme is constantly changing, and that's what we're having to deal with. And we're coming up, and as I'll be explaining a little bit later on, about the 2014 scheme, which is, we're on the cusp of from next April. And that's yet more change. So just looking at the 1976 scheme, where we were at the time, the fund value, it was created in 74, the fund, mergers, local government reorganisation and such like. So we actually, we're a couple of years into that at that point, but the fund was worth £127 million. It was 100% funded, which meant there were no debts. The assets that were there, together with the employers' contributions and the employees' contributions, meant that all the debts for the future pensions could be paid out of the money we had in the fund. We had 24,129 active members, of which 67% were male. Employment was 98% full-time. There probably were part-time jobs then, but part-timers weren't allowed in the scheme. So what we got is that the people who were in the scheme were pretty much full-time. There were a few people that managed to get in as a result of circumstances particular to them, but in reality, virtually everybody was a full-time worker at that time. Average pay was £1,739 a year. A Morris Marina cost £1,670 odd. So basically, looking at that, you had to be very wealthy or buying one on Never to get a Morris Marina. Employers, we had 21 employers in the fund, mainly the councils, but the traditional ones who are still there today, fire, police, probation and things like that. Employers' contribution rate was 10%, and employee contribution rate was 6% for office workers and 5% for manual staff. Life expectancy once you'd retired was age 72. So retirement age 65, you're expected to live 7 years in retirement, and that was the average age of life expectancy. So shoot forward to now. 127 million is now 5.4 billion. It's not quite a trillion, but it's a big number nevertheless. However, we only have 76% of the money that we need to fulfil the expectation to pay benefits. So we have a deficit, and we have a deficit that's occurred over a number of years for a number of reasons, but it's a deficit that needs to be paid, and it needs to be paid by the employers through their contributions. And that's why the actuarial valuation that we're on with at the moment is very, very important, and we're having very important discussions, as you expect, with the employers about repaying the deficit. Been doing it over a number of years, but every 3 years we get to another point where we have to assess what contributions they're going to be paying in for the 3 years coming up. Membership, as you'll see on my next slide anyway, is starting to fall, and I've been saying that for the last few years as a result of the downsizing of the large councils. But at the moment, or at the time this was done, we were at 49,910. But significantly, the workforce is now 72% female. So the nature of local government employment has changed, and the way in which employment is out there has changed completely around in the period since I started working in 76. Employment is 55% full-time, which means 45% is part-time. And we have lots of employees who have more than one job, more than one part-time job. So the nature of work is changing, and it's not just changing in local government, it's changing all that place across the road. It's basically short-term contracts, many part-time contracts and things like that. And our scheme reflects that in the change over the years. Average pay now is 20,488. Not sure what car that would buy you now, but effectively inflation and everything else has had an impact on the change during the years. Employers is significant. From 21, we now got 310. Not all of them are paying in, whether about 240 odd are paying in, but effectively that's an awful lot of employers. The number of members has increased, but not by the same number of employers. This has arisen purely out of reorganisations, particularly in education, where we now have standalone academies as employers, where they used to be part of the local education authority and things like that. But what it means for us in administration is that we've got more people to deal with. We've got more employers to explain the rules to, more employers to collect money from, and all the thing that goes with it. So, you know, it's completely different. The employer's contribution includes deficit recovery here, and so what they're paying for contributions for future membership is around, at the moment, 12%. The rest of that 19.75 is actually the deficit recovery. That's the money we're getting back to get us from 76% funded up to 100% funded. The plan is over 22 years and counting down every 3 years. But that's where we're at the moment. So the bill that needs to be paid to get all the money back needs to be paid over a period of time. It's just like a loan. It's like a mortgage. It's being paid back with interest to the fund every 3 years. Employee contribution rate's slightly different in that it's now banded, so the more you earn, the more you pay. But on average, it's not much different to what it's always been. It's now 6.25 on average. Life expectancy currently is better, so it's 80 plus, and that's as a result of all the things that I'm sure you're aware of, advances in, particularly in medicine and so on, which has led to us living longer. But that means, of course, we're paying the pensions longer. So if you're in the audience, you're receiving a pension, the longer you live, the longer we pay the pension, which might not necessarily have been the case when you actually started in employment, when it was assessed how much money was needed to pay your pension for the rest of your life. Picked up as well, just as a further comparison, the retirement. So I looked at, we've got all the data there, so I had a look at what types of retirement we had in 76. I think we had about 500 or so retirements in that year, but 47%, nearly half, were age limit being 65. So they'd working life, 65, old age pension, and retired at age limit. 27% were ill health retirement. I don't think people were any less well in those days. I think the scheme was a little bit more lighter in terms of who could get ill health retirement. And I think, you know, I've seen in the old days, we used to get certificates and it used to say why people were retiring and getting a pension for being permanently incapable of doing the job. Best one I ever saw was sore left ankle, which I'm sure doesn't meet that criteria. But it got through, and somebody, and they're probably still going today with that sore left ankle, got a pension as a result of it. So 27% were ill health retirement. And then you come on to the smaller numbers. So early retirement, 7%. Death in service has always been low, good. I mean, that's a low stat that you want, but 7%. Redundancy, 7%, and a few odds and sods making up the rest. In 2013, this is from April 12 to 31st of March 2013, completely different. Age limit, 3%. So only 3% of the people who retired this year, and I think there were about 1,500 people retired in 2013, lasted to 65. Ill health retirement, the rules are much, much tougher. Only 3%. People are put up for ill health retirement, but you have to meet the criteria, not only to be permanently incapable of doing your job, it's also about your capability to do other forms of work as well. So when you start getting into that ball game, the numbers come down. Early retirement. The government reckon we should all be working longer, and obviously they're moving state pension age, and clearly there's financial reasons, and they have the reasons for doing that. But here, people want to retire early. So we've got early retirement, so that's anywhere really from 55 onwards, but typically it'd be from 60 onwards. 56% retiring early. Death in service has come down, which then obviously ties in with the stat of with people living longer and better medicine and things like that. The redundancies as a result of local government, the district councils downsizing through having to do through the budget cuts and so on. And then the others now are different types of retirement that we didn't have before in 76. So now we've got late retirement where people can actually stay on past 65. So we have got some, and some that work on into the 70s too. And we've also got flexible retirement where you can actually now retire and carry on working. So you enjoy your benefits and then reduce your capacity in some way, either go part-time or take a lower paid job, and draw your pension and both. So the others are starting to build up as well. But as you can see, the scheme from when I started in employment is completely different. And as you will see in a short while, what we've got coming on is even more differences that we have to deal with. But the reason for change and the reason for shoehorning all this in is that's the reason why we're changing the scheme, because the scheme is not what it was when it was first created when I started work in 76 for what was basically work till you were 65 and then live a few short years in retirement, and that was it. Things have changed, and that's why the scheme is having to change too. So just to nip through the stuff that's in the annual report, as I usually do for you, and you'll be familiar with this. We're adding a few more years on every time now, so we're starting to build this graph nicely. The top one will always be going up because we're not losing members as such, because when people retire from active status, they're going into deferred or they're going into pensioners. So choose what happens in a year, that's going to go up. But it's gone up by 2.94% in the year. Active membership, the people paying in, has been falling recently. It started to fall dramatically between 10 and 11, and similarly 11 and 12. Started to slow a bit now. One of the reasons for that is you may have heard on the television there's advertisements, we're all in, workplace pensions and auto-enrolment. What that means for local authorities is that people who are eligible to be in the workplace pension but are not currently in it because they've chosen not to be, are auto-enrolled into it. And that means that over time, people who of not looking after themselves by paying for a pension should be caught by it and have some form of pension in retirement. And this is not just local government, this is nationally, hence the adverts on TV. But from a local government point of view, employers are having to tell people that you're not in a scheme, but there is one around if you want to join it. And I think the levelling off here is as a result of that, in that we're still losing members, but we're also gaining members. They're not new employees, the people who have worked all along, but just now realising the benefits of joining a scheme. I also know in the background the employers are perhaps gearing up, and the district councils for further cuts, and it'll be interesting to see where we stand next year on that. But at the moment, things have slowed down a little. In terms of the rest, going up in that similar curve in terms of deferred members and pensioners. And as you can see there, in terms of pensioners that we've got to pay, we've now got a fairly sizable payroll to pay every month, and hopefully we're still doing that successfully and on time. Something else to do with employers. I've mentioned in the others that we've got 300 and odd employers, and just that graph just says it all in a way. It used to be a few years ago, pre-2009, we may have, say 10 per year, and these were mainly community bodies or contractors where district councils were outsourcing services. And now a team used to deal with, bringing 10 new employers into the fund, and it's not easy. You've got to go through a legal process and get employer rates and things like that. We've got to ensure that the membership is right and that the employer is paying the right contributions and things like that. Moving through and the education changes, we start to build up, and this is what's been happening. So to this point, you can see the curve and how we're building up employers that we're dealing with. We've another 35 in the pipeline today, and 94 academies. And these are all individual organisations, as I say, all paying in and all requiring our services and the administration that we provide. Hopefully it will slow down, but no signs of it just yet. Looking at our performance, we've done well again, I'm pleased to say. We processed 28,000 just over cases during the year, of which 99.7% was within our customer service target. That beats last year's 99.5 by 0.2, so I'm pleased about that. Clearly there's not much further for us to go, but it's not about just meeting the targets, it's about the quality of what we send out. So we're always looking to improve what we actually do, how we send it, how we explain this damn complicated scheme to people in a way that they can understand and relate to. And that's difficult with the membership across all spectrums. So, that's our challenge, and that's what we hope to keep achieving. In terms of complaints and disputes, very few, just 6 formal complaints and 1 internal dispute during the year, which, given the workload, is 0.001% of our total workload. So on that side, it's good. From my point of view, it's bad because I don't want any. And we keep trying to ensure that whenever there is a complaint, and we're not always guilty of doing something, but we need to look at it and respond in the right way. But where we have made some sort of error, it's trying to learn from that and making sure we don't make that error again. We do lots of surveys. You may have received them yourself, but we do lots of surveys on different things. But on every single survey, we always put an overall satisfaction. How satisfied with us are you generally? And we add that up over the year. And during last year, 100% of employers we surveyed said they were satisfied with us, and 98% of members said they were satisfied with us. So again, pleased about that, but I'd prefer it to be 100%, and we'll keep plugging away at that. But, from yourselves, if you ever experience anything, then do let us know that, anything that you're not satisfied with, do let us know, because we want to respond and we want to make sure that we're doing things in the right way. We measure our performance with others. Bit disappointing this year. There was only 52 pension funds out of the 89 participated. It's never been them all. You can't get some people to participate in these things, but it did drop from the year before. But nevertheless, 52 pension funds completed a survey, sent in all information about them, and if you believe everything that they put in, this is how the results come out. Our cost per member, so what we spend on you individually for everything that we do for you during the year, in South Yorkshire is £20 and threepence. The average across all these 52 is £21.42, so we're below the line. We're below average in terms of cost. I'm pleased about that because I like us to be below average. It's not just about cost though, it's about the quality, because we could spend £20 on you and not send you a newsletter, or we might not even do this event. We might not do a lot of things, but we do an awful lot of things for that £20. So that's, there is the quality element of what you actually get for your money. And it's same as anything else. You spending 20 quid, it's what you get for it, not actually just the 20 quid. In terms of the last times we've participated, we've been in this 11 years, and in 10 out of the 11 years we've been below the line. We've been below average in terms of cost and above average in terms of quality. So for me, that sets us as an organisation. That's how we are, and that's how we want to continue. What we've been doing, well, apart from doing all the day job, we think about things and we try different things and to improve all the time, as I've said. We got wind of people wanting to opt out, and it's understandable why they were wanting to opt out, because things are tight. And one of the things that you can do is take an immediate increase in pay, if you're not getting a pay rise, by opting out of the pension scheme, because you're not paying your contributions. And we got wind that was happening. We started to see more opt-out forms coming into the office. So we decided, well, what we will do is if anybody tries to opt out, we'll send them a letter and we'll show them what they're missing. If you opt out of the scheme, this is the pension you will be losing. And also, if you took that amount of money and put it into a private pension scheme, which is not as good as our scheme, this is the amount you would have to pay into that scheme to get what you're getting from our scheme. So far, that's worked very well. We've managed to get people who have tried to opt out and sent in a form. We've sent them the letter, and 80% of those have stayed in. So that's about 500 more members in the scheme today than otherwise would have been if we'd have done nothing. We've started, and if you get your newsletter online, you will have seen a certain change into the interactive nature. We're trying to move with the times. If you've got a tablet or a phone that you use, you'll be able to page it on screen and things like that. But we're also, at the start of this, but we're also like to put interactive elements into it. So when we think of anything, which we haven't just yet, but it's opening us up to be able to make it a better experience for you than perhaps if you like that sort of thing, reading it in paper. Don't worry if you like paper, because you'll still get the paper. So it's either way, but this is just us trying to move forward and keep abreast of technology. Hybrid mail is something that is really wouldn't impact you. You wouldn't notice it, but what it means for us is that we don't have to print letters and put them in envelopes and put them in franking machines. All we do is we type it up, send it all securely, and it magically gets posted out to you, but not by us. That's cheaper on postage, and it's more efficient for us because we're not spending time doing the small things like that when we can do more work. Sale of software. In South Yorkshire, we've got a very high-class IT department, and through working with them, we're able to develop software for our own use that makes us more efficient. But I've got colleagues in other local government pension funds who are not so lucky. And what we've done through talking to them, and by no means, because I'm no salesman, so by no means, going out there and saying, do you want this? But just by talking to them and saying, we can do this, we've managed to then sell them software for them to use. So our software that deals with our benefits in our office and deals with our work in our office is now in another couple of councils up and down the country where we've sold it. The good news there is that's money back into the fund. So we're actually selling stuff there that helps the other funds as well. We're working on the valuation. It's a lot of hard work to try and ensure all the data that the actuary works upon to then number crunch and come out with the results of the valuation is sent off and on time. And we managed to achieve that. Ordinarily, you may have noticed you got your annual statement early this year. We use, if you're still working anyway, you won't have had any, but we actually achieved sending it by a deadline in September, when the deadline used to be December. And that came on the back of the work we were able to do on the valuation to actually get the data to the actuary on time to facilitate the discussions that we've talked about already. We're in the midst of a new pensions administration system. We're having to buy this because it's not something we can develop on such a large scale ourselves. And we've been working during the year to get onto a framework agreement which allows us to procure the software along with other authorities and get a good price for it. So we're in with that, and it will be coming on stream in 2014. What you might be interested in is it's not going to be 2.7. It could be, but it's unlikely to be. But because of the timing of this, I don't know exactly what CPI is going to be, and hence your pensions increase come next April. But from 7th of April 14 next year, you will be getting an increase. And in August, it was 2.7%. The fund works on September. So within a week or so, if you see the announcement for CPI on the news or whatever, then that's what it will be from April. It's reducing trend at the moment, so don't shoot me if it's actually less than this, and I think it probably will be, but it's in the ballpark, so that's what your increase is likely to be next year. I'll not spend ages on this, it's in your pack, and you can just look at it. I just wanted to spend a bit of time just explaining the 2014. If you're retired, then it doesn't affect you. Your benefits are what your benefits are. If you're a deferred member and you've already left, it doesn't affect you unless you rejoin. So as it stands at the moment, you're not affected by this if you're either of those categories. If you're an active member, then the scheme is changing, and the scheme is changing from next April. The major change is that we're moving from the final salary basis to career average revalued earnings, commonly known as CARE. Final salary means that when you're retired, whatever you've finished on in your last 12 months, that's what we pay benefits on, or calculate benefits on. Career average works on the pay you get in each year and then adds it all together at the end. So instead of calculating your pension at the end, as we did for perhaps many of you, you actually calculate it each year. That's a big challenge because in the past it really didn't matter so much what happened till you got to your final year, because we could always pick it up at that time and we worked benefits out properly at that time. Now it has to be right every single year, and there's the scheme is going into what's known as the account. So you'll have a pension account just like your bank account, and the pension account will contain your money for that year. So you'll start to see exactly how your pension is building up. The accrual rate is changing, and the accrual rate is changing from a 60th to a 49th. That's better. So that's a bigger amount of money than when it was in a 60th. What the number crunchers in the government have said is that a final salary at a 60th and a career average at a 49th is broadly equivalent. I have no idea, but that's what it's meant to be. So that's why the accrual rate has got seemingly better, because when they're creating the scheme, the new scheme is intended to save money. So when you look at it on the face, well, how can it save money? Because a 49th is better than a 60th. Well, overall, we're told that is meant to be pretty much equivalent to the 60th and final salary. In terms of contribution rates, very much most of the membership will be paying the same into the new scheme as what they are now. So if you look at the one on the left, on the new scheme, and you go to 6.8, then you go on to the one that's currently there to 6.8, you can see that most people up to salaries of around £40,000 are actually contribution rates are not changing. In terms of anybody earning more than that, then significantly it starts to increase to the very highest paid is going to be paying 12.5%. Pay is on all earnings, whereas if you think back to perhaps when you were in employment, it was only set pensionable earnings. So perhaps if you did overtime and things like that, it didn't count towards your pension. It will under the new scheme. So anything anybody earns, there are some exclusions, but in the main, anything anybody earns will go towards a pension. That might cost more in contributions from your salary, but it does mean that you'll have a bigger pension at the end of it if you're in one of those jobs where you do set hours, but then you do things over and above that. Something new in the new scheme, I haven't got a clue. We just sent a survey out to active members. I haven't got a clue how it will be taken to, but there is a concern. I'm just talking about optants out and the reasons why people might want to opt out because of the nature of the economy and so on. They're bringing into the scheme a low-cost option, which is basically you can pay 50% of the contributions you will pay for 50% of the benefits. So people will be able, instead of just opting out, to say, well, I just want to pay half of what we're going to pay, hopefully for a period. It's not intended to be a long-term thing, but to pay less over a period and then at some point catch up. I have my doubts, but I have no clue at the moment what the membership will think of this. We will publicise it and it will be up to the members to do. What we're doing at the moment is a survey just to get a feel for, well, yeah, I'd quite like that. Oh, no, that's stupid. I don't want to do that. So we'll see. State pension age is moving, and so is the normal pension age of the scheme. It moves with state pension age. So that means going forward that to draw your full benefits, you've got to work to your state pension age. So if your state pension age moves from 65 to 66 to 67, then so will the scheme pension age, and the ability to draw unreduced benefits and full benefits starts to move. So effectively taking all those early retirements and trying to make them work longer. Pretty much the rest of it is very similar, except the qualification for benefits period has gone up to 2 years again. This is a bouncing thing. It's been 5 years. It went to 2 years, went to 3 months, and it's going back to 2 years. But essentially, that's a good news for us as scheme administrators, because when you could qualify for a benefit after 3 months, people then left after 5 months. They got a very, very small pension because we had to give them a pension. You couldn't give them the money back. You had to give them a pension because qualification for benefits were 3 months. But it was very small pension, and we're now left with thousands of people with small pensions in the fund, which, when they come to draw it, is quite negligible in terms of being worth money to them. One other thing, I don't think I've got it on the slide, we talked about the consultations and things. One thing that's out there and we've responded to at the moment is fund mergers. So I don't know whether you will have seen this in the news or whatever, but the local government minister has suggested that the 89 pension funds ought to be less than 89. And what that might mean for South Yorkshire is that we might be merged with West Yorkshire, or we might be merged with Greater Manchester, or we could be merged with somebody down south. We don't know. All we know is that there is an agenda at the moment that suggests that in the future, and it won't happen quick, but in the future there may be less pension funds. We've submitted a response, and as you'd expect, we're quite happy to stay as we are. And we've explained all that, but just keep an eye on it because that might hit the news probably around next May, when the ministers are due to make the announcement. But of course, any changes, you'll be the first to know. We'll put it on the website and we'll put it in newsletters and so on. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.